Hey friends, and welcome back to another travel vlog. I am super excited to finally be able to share this with you. It has a lot of content, so please bear with me. And yeah, I hope that you enjoy.
We have arrived in Adelaide. We've been here for a day now. We've just been relaxing, so I haven't really been recording anything. The most that we've done has been like print off some last minute things and hang out with some family. Alch is at the temple right now. We're going out for dinner tonight, and then we will be heading to the airport around 3 a.m. Our flight is around 7, I believe, but we have to get there obviously 3 hours beforehand for luggage and security checks and everything like that. I'm excited. It hasn't really hit me yet that we're going, but I guess I'll do some more recording at the airport and let you guys know how it goes.
Our official day one begins when we head to the airport to go to Vietnam. We flew over to Adelaide to begin with because it was cheaper to fly as a family rather than on our own from Sydney and meet the rest of the fam there. The flight itself was about 9 hours long, but we did have a quick layover in Perth to pick up more passengers along the way.
Continue to our final destination, Hoi An Airport.
It was my first time going over to Perth, but unfortunately we didn't even get off the plane and people just got on instead. But from there, it was 6 more hours until we were touching down in Ho Chi Minh. I did bring quite a few things to do on the flight, however, I don't think I remember actually doing any of them. I was also very distracted by the different patterns that the clouds made and the change in the view when we arrived in Vietnam. One of the first things I noticed, of course, was that it was quite humid. Our plane parked quite far from the terminal, so we had to catch a bus in, and then we were on our way to a different section of the airport because we had to pick up more boarding passes to get on our Vietnam Airlines flight to Phu Quoc. At this point, we were all quite hungry and thirsty, but that was okay because Vietnam Airlines itself actually offered us multiple bottles of water and bubble tea on the plane, which I thought was quite cool. It was also quite late at this point, so we were very grateful that we were getting closer to our final destination for the night. It had just been a very long day. Once we touched down at Phu Quoc International Airport, we were about a 40-minute drive to our hotel. Luckily, there were no troubles with luggage or anything at this stage, and although I was nervous to vlog and things in front of Alch's family, I felt a little bit comforted because quite a few of them were also vlogging the trip and recording things too. This bus ride was probably one of the bumpiest bus rides I had ever been on, but we made it and we were staying at the Wyndham Grand Hotel. Although you guys haven't seen the other rooms yet, I would say that this hotel room was probably my favorite hotel room of the entire trip. Once we had settled in and taken our luggage to our rooms, we jumped on these little golf cart things, or we were referring to them as tuk-tuks, and went to a place called Grand World, where we would have dinner for the next 3 nights. Alch liked to describe Grand World as a movie set. It was really brightly lit and there were a lot of vacant shops and things, so it did quite feel like a movie. That night we chose to have dinner at some of the nearby markets, got quite a bit of seafood, ate some frog and even had some sugarcane juice. After that, we more or less went back to the hotel to get ready for the next big day. Day 2 was one of, if not the biggest day of our entire trip. We managed to pack so much into this day, and looking back on the footage, I just could never tell when it ended. To start off every good day, we began with breakfast, and we were lucky enough to have a massive breakfast buffet available to us at our hotel in the morning. And nothing prepares you more than a big cup of Vietnamese coffee. We soon went back to our hotel room to finish getting ready for the day, and then we were off. Met the rest of the family down in the lobby of the hotel and were just waiting on some taxis to take us to the other side of the island. One thing to be wary about on these sorts of trips is that the taxi drivers will take you to a bunch of different places as a tourist attraction to try and get more people to buy different products from their friends. We did end up just telling them to take us where we needed to go, and soon we stopped in a local town to pick up some SIM cards because a few of us needed internet and wanted to be able to contact each other if we got split up. It was very different to see the types of buildings and things around Phu Quoc. Some parts were very, very well developed and other parts weren't. These buildings were apparently vacant because they were too expensive for normal people to be able to afford. Once we're on the other side of the island, it was time to begin our little island hopping adventure. We got into a tiny boat with one guy and he took us to a couple of islands around the area. It took us about half an hour to get to the first island, and when we arrived we saw that the first island was a very touristy one called Ocean Pearl Island. As expected, it was quite tropical. We got to sit by the beach with some coconuts, and there were also quite a lot of touristy photo opportunities around the island. I'm not actually sure how long we were at island number 1, but it did feel like we were there for a couple of hours, and it was nice to just sit down and relax for a little bit. It wasn't too long before we went to our second island of the day. This island was also super pretty. It had these cute little rainbow propeller things all over the place, and we actually got to swim while we were here as well. We weren't here for nearly as long as we were on the first island, but I would say it was equally as nice. Although we were getting a little tired and a little hungry, we were given the opportunity to jump off the back of the boat out in the open water, and so we did. I don't have too much footage of it, but it was a lot of fun. We got back to the big island and our main goal was to find food, but we stopped and saw some school children along the way and decided to walk along the markets to see what people were selling and just what the general vibe of the island was. It didn't take us too long to find some food, so we stopped on the side at one store to get some pho. Before we left the general area, our taxi driver said there was one more place he wanted to take us to and we shouldn't miss it. He took us to an area nearby called Sunset Town, and it was really pretty. The buildings were basically watercolored and looked like they were straight out of a painting, and they also had different structures that looked like they were plucked straight out of Europe, such as a Big Ben replica and a Colosseum on the side of a building. And probably the most exciting part of the whole area was the Kissing Bridge. This bridge is basically made of two arches that almost meet in the middle, where two lovers would meet each other on each side, and it would often end in proposals. It was also time for us to see the sunset, so it was a great time for us to go and view the bridge. We did hang around the bridge for quite a while. We were waiting for the parents to come down and meet us here, so we were mucking around and making little scenes to keep ourselves occupied while we waited. Here are some of the boys pretending to propose to each other. It did get dark fairly quickly, and soon the mosquitoes actually started attacking us, so we called up the parents to find out that they were still where we left them at the very top of the mountain. So we hung around for a little bit longer and then decided to head back. And sure enough, Sunset Town was prettier at sundown. And on the way back to the hotel, we decided to have a little rave party.
Hands up! Up and down, up and down, up and down. Let me hear the beat, go!
There were a couple of things planned for when we got back, and one of them was going back to Grand World to see a show. They had this show every night, and it reminded me very much of Venice because the show consisted of gondolas on the water area and had Venetian masks on most of the characters. The show did go for quite a while, and it did tell a story, but I honestly can't remember it and can mainly remember all of the pictures displayed on the water and the lights and things throughout it. After the show, we were supposed to find some food around the area. However, after a short walk, we couldn't find anything that we all decided to eat. So we ended up venturing outside into the local town around and eating local that night. Alch's mum and cousins ended up going for some sort of noodles, but Alch's dad was enticed by the seafood, so we all sat around and shared food anyway. It was a nice sort of way to finish the day, relaxing after a super long one. There was one more thing to do before we finished up for the night, and that was, of course, visit the casino, which was right next door. A couple of the guys wanted to go, and I thought, why not while we were there? Although I am not a huge gambler, so I just wanted to go see what it was like and maybe drink a cocktail or two. If day 2 wasn't the biggest day, then day 3 definitely was. This was the day that we went to the Vin Wonders theme park. Day 3.
No, 2 piece.
Double peace sign. Vin Wonders is apparently like the Vietnamese Disney World. Apparently a billionaire who has lots of money got very bored and wanted to create something cool, so he made a bunch of theme parks around the country, and this was one of them. I was super excited to check it out. I have been to Disney World before in Paris, but this was very different. They had their own characters and their own different buildings and stories throughout the whole park. One of the things that we found that I was actually surprised about was a hustling games village. However, the games village was actually empty and it was just a giant amusement arcade room. All of the games were free to play and Alch and I had a good time anyway. Soon got a few calls because the family had apparently split up and they wanted to stick together, so we met up with the rest of them but found a Greek restaurant along the way. So we're in the theme park, Vin Wonder, and they've got like Greek restaurants and like, this says Achilles shield. That is so wild. These guys are copying so many European countries. And it wasn't just Europe. Apparently we were going back to the Mayan and Aztec eras as well. Looking back on it, I actually think it's quite cool that they incorporated so many different historical cultures into a theme park. And of course, with the theme park comes really big rides. This one was a little bit daunting. We were cheering on the girls that were on it because it was creaking really loudly and it was kind of terrifying to even be watching it. But we did go on this water ride here. It's like the Vin Wonders equivalent of Splash Mountain. There were quite a few other things to see throughout the park, but we were a little bit tight on time because we were going to go see the mermaid show at the aquarium at 2 o'clock. We did keep exploring though, and soon came across a Viking village which had a little obstacle course that Alch and his cousin Sebastian wanted to do as well. The rest of the family wanted to go ahead and find somewhere to eat and sit down and maybe have some water, but I hung back and got a little bit sunburnt, but I wanted to take some videos and photos of the boys on the obstacle course.
It's day 3 and we're still in Phu Quoc, but we are now at their theme park. It's pretty cool. I haven't really done any like face to camera vlogging this whole time. But now I've got a moment alone, so I thought I would do some. Sebastian and Alch are over on this little ride. It's kind of like a treetop climbing thingy, which looks really cool. All the aunties and the rest of the cousins and the siblings are over waiting under some shade, but I thought I would grab some photos. So I am here waiting alone, but it's really nice. It's super warm. We are going to go to a water park afterwards, and then yeah, it's been a good day. Also, I don't know if you can tell, but the heat and the humidity of this place has just made my hair absolutely curly and wild. So a very tropical climate here.
I thought it was quite cute. The obstacle course actually had 3 tiers to it, and the boys took the middle tier, so it's not quite the highest one. However, they were up quite high.
Just do it! Just do it! Go, go, go!
They also had a girl that joined them on the obstacle course a little bit later, but she was super fast at completing it, so they were trying to speed up and finish it before she caught up.
Come on, baby!
They finished the course as quickly as they could, and we met up with the rest of the family at a little drink spot before heading back to the giant sea turtle aquarium to go watch the mermaid show.
Wow, look at all these chickens.
This was probably the biggest aquarium wall that I've actually ever seen, and the show was really cute too. They had scuba divers, they had mermaids, and everyone was making hearts and waving at each other, so it was really nice. It was also super convenient to get out of the hot weather by watching the show as well, so we had a great time. Okay, and you guys know that I love an aquarium. It was in my New Zealand vlog, and I've been to the Sydney one so many times. So, of course, we had to dig deeper and actually explore the different sea creatures that were in the aquarium here. We started in the jellyfish room, and then we moved on to some cool creatures like the eels and these little rays, which I thought had adorable faces. There were so many colourful little fish as well, and just plenty of different species to look at. I'm actually not sure if it's one of Alch's favorites, but every time we come across penguins in an aquarium, Alch does get very excited. They are really cute though, and very cuddly looking, and I do love them as well. I absolutely adored the way this one was standing on the edge of the ice. I got a small clip, but it's so cute. On to another one of my favorites, the sharks. They didn't actually have too many sharks, but they did have a lot of big fish. There was also like this fluorescent glow in the dark room. However, the darker it got, the more I couldn't actually film, so I didn't take as much footage there. And then we were on to the water park to cool down for the afternoon. Once again, I also couldn't film too much because water and phones don't mix well. After the water park, we headed back to the main square to find that all the characters were having a little rave party in the middle. We needed to find something to eat, so Alch and I went around to all of the different carts and eventually settled on some popcorn, a lamb skewer, I was pretty sure it was, and a banh mi to share. As the sun was setting, it was time for a show. Once again, I don't actually remember much of the story. It was very fairy tale-like and a lot of kids were super excited to see it. I was more entranced by the flashing lights and wanted to sit down after a long day of walking. You would think by this time that we were almost done for the day and Alch was too, lying in the gutter like that, but unfortunately we weren't, although we did have a really good time. We got back to the hotel and freshened up for a few more minutes, and then we were on the road again, going back to Grand World, where the parents had hired some scooters for us to ride around on. I actually did really enjoy this part of the trip, and it's one of my favorite parts that I remember, just going around Grand World where it was safe, there wasn't too many cars on the road, and exploring a little bit, hanging out with the family, and even doing some shopping along the way. One of the things that we did come across was the Teddy Bear Museum. I'm kind of sad that we didn't actually get to explore it more, and we realized afterwards that it was still open. However, we got a chance to check out the gift shop, and Alch and I bought some hats from here. We were on the scooters for a few hours, but I promise we did stop for some food and drink. But Alch and I like to explore a little bit on our own, and we even visited this little area just outside of Grand World that had massive statues of bugs and flowers and things that we saw every time we drove by, but we never got the chance to actually look at until we went up to it ourselves.
Day 4 and it's checkout time.
Day 4 and our first official day leaving Phu Quoc. The first thing on the agenda for today was to head straight to the airport so we could check in and get our boarding passes so we could be on our way to Hanoi. We were all quite hungry, so we decided to get some food while we were there. Alch was excited because he did see a Burger King sign, but we got confused and ended up ordering pho at a place called Star Cafe instead, which was fine because it was quite yummy. And then we had to get ready for our flight. We were a lot happier that all of the domestic flights were significantly shorter than the international one, and I got some coffee on board too, and it was quite tasty, so I was very happy with that as well. Our plan was to only stay in Hanoi for one night before we headed to Ha Long Bay and stayed on a boat overnight. As you can see, I was quite surprised because there was quite a drastic change in the humidity between Phu Quoc and Hanoi. We ended up staying at another fancy hotel called the Melia, and we were confused because there was a lot of security and baggage checks in the lobby, but you'll see why later on. When we got to the hotel room, we were very confused though. We found rose petals on the bed and a first wedding anniversary cake.
Okay, we just got to our hotel in Hanoi. We just went up to our room and there were roses and a wedding anniversary cake in there, and I don't know if it's our room, but our keys work and it's got our name on it, so...
Turns out it was Alch's mum's fault. She wanted to treat us to some special goodies and told everyone that it was our first wedding anniversary at every hotel that we stayed at. This is why there was a lot of security checks as well. Basically, the president of Laos was there visiting and staying in the same hotel as us. We did want to try and catch a glimpse of him. However, we wanted to walk towards Train Street and see if we could get to see one of the trains go by as we were there. Luckily, it wasn't too far a walk from our hotel, so we got there rather quickly. However, it was another 2 hours until the first train would go through, so we found a place to sit down that all of the family would fit at, and then we decided to go for a little walk on our own. It was super pretty and there were lots of places for photo opportunities, but I'm glad that Alch and I went on our own little walk through the other streets adjacent to it because we found so many local businesses and it was just really cool to check out. A few hours went past quite quickly and we were able to sit down at one of the stores in Railway Street to have some food and some coffee while we waited for the train. But it wasn't too long until the first train went by, and then it was only another 20 minutes for a second train, so we stayed for that one as well. Of course, I didn't realize until it actually went by, but the train itself was massive and was so close to our faces that if we stood up, we probably would have gotten hit by it. It was a very cool thing to experience though. On the way back to the hotel, we came across the Hanoi Book Street and a cute little marketplace, so we got to explore that before going back home to bed. Day 5, and this is the day that we were on our way to Ha Long Bay. First things first, we did need to exchange some Aussie dollars into Vietnamese dong and then wait for our taxi so we could be on our way. If I remember correctly, I think it was a 2-hour trip, but it was lucky that we actually got to stop on the way and we did sleep in the taxi too. At our stop along the way, we came across this little marketplace and we picked up some bun bao, which I thought was actually quite tasty, and I love that they had little quail eggs inside. Once we got to the actual bay area, there were so many boats on the water, which meant that there were a lot of tour companies there too. This actually meant that we had to wait around for a couple of hours until our tour group was ready to head out to our boat, but luckily there was a little stall across the road where we could buy some snacks and just hang out at. It was finally our time to go, and we jumped on this tiny little boat to head out to our big cruise that was waiting further out in the bay. There were quite a few people that were also joining us on our boat, so it was nice to see that there were a lot of other families along, and I was excited to see what kind of night we would have. Once we arrived, we were greeted by the entire crew and settled in almost immediately to have lunch. We did get the opportunity to go out onto the front deck to explore a little bit before everything was served, but I was very hungry, so I came back inside and got some food and a coffee. Soon it was time to go get into our swimmers because we were going kayaking. This was our first activity for the day and we spent quite a lot of time out on the water, but we did have a time limit, so I didn't take my phone with me and I didn't get a lot of footage, but we had fun. Alch and I came back relatively early and we were waiting for the siblings to get back, so we hung around on the pier and found this giant trampoline thing that another boat brought, and Alch had a lot of fun on that before it was taken away from him. When we got back to the boat, it was almost time for happy hour on the top deck, so Alch and I stayed in our swimmers and wanted to get into the pool.
What'd you say?
Do you remember when the times were at the other teams?
7:50 dinner.
But when I'm fishing and stuff.
Before that.
I brought my gimbal up so I could take a good few videos and photos of us just having a good time, and then we got in the pool and it was actually freezing. We literally only stayed in there for a tiny bit of time before it got too much to handle, and so we got out and got into a towel and got ready for happy hour. Slowly but surely, the rest of the family also came up to join us. I'm videoing.
Yeah, I'm pretending to be mum.
Oh, yeah.
Like that.
I want to put it on the record that this is the moment that things slowly started to spiral a little bit for me. My first drink. I think in total we ordered about 6 cocktails and they were very alcoholic and I drank most of them. So although I did slow down, I wanted to try most of the ones on the menu and got maybe a little bit too tipsy to be around Alch's family. The next activity that the whole crew was involved with, I wasn't actually there, so this is Alch filming. They held a cooking class out on the top deck. I think they made spring rolls, however, I'm not entirely sure. I was in the bathroom at this time. I did make it back upstairs to hang out with everyone, but I do know when I've reached my limit, so I did take myself down to bed shortly after. This did mean that I missed out on some karaoke and squidding, but honestly, I needed the rest.
It's day 6 and I'm currently on the boat in Halong Bay. Today I think we are basically checking out, having lunch and then heading back to Hanoi for another night. I have no idea what the plans are, but we're staying in a different hotel than the other night and we will be, I guess, wandering around having a little look at some markets and stores and things. I feel like that's the general go for most places. It's really pretty out here. It is like it's been this overcast the entire time, but it's still really nice. The water's been cold when we swam in it, and yeah, I like it. It's very pretty.
I'm gonna be real with you guys, I turned out alright after the night that I had before, and there was nothing that some watermelon juice couldn't fix. Soon we were on our way back to the mainland, but there were a bunch of us squished onto this tiny boat, even smaller than the one we arrived on, and our luggage was in there as well, so we were joking that it was going to fall in the water, but it was low-key scary that they would. If I remember correctly, it was actually quite nice and cool this day, and being on the water was quite relaxing as well. When we got back to the mainland and back to the main tour guide building, we did have to wait a little bit for our taxi to arrive, but it didn't take too long, thankfully, and we were on our way back to Hanoi. We did stop back on the way over as well, but it was a different place to where we stopped on the way to the boat. This one was more of a bigger rest stop, and I got some coffee, chocolate, and coffee biscuits to take with me on the road. The next place that we were staying at was the Intercontinental in Hanoi. So once again, very fancy 5-star hotel with the biggest crystal chandelier in the lobby that I have ever seen. We had a bit of time to kill before we were supposed to head out into the city, and we heard that they had a really nice swimming pool. So of course, me and a few of the other kids went down with Bawai to go for a swim. Alch wasn't feeling too well and didn't want to get into the water, so he did some coding. This hotel was quite fancy and had quite a big bathtub in the room. I did want to use it, but we didn't have time. But the one thing that everyone was excited about was the fact that our toilet had an inbuilt bidet. When we went into Hanoi City, there were two things that we wanted to do. First off, we wanted to get food, and second was to do some shopping. We found this cute little Michelin star restaurant that was serving bun cha, and this was the first time that we had ever had it, and it was really nice, but I think it was a little too sweet for me. And while the rest of the family were still eating and just hanging around and chatting, Alch and I went on one of our little wanders around the streets because we wanted to explore and hopefully find some souvenirs to buy. We did stumble across a really cute bakery where we shared a chocolate croissant, and we also found a cute coffee place where we bought some Vietnamese coffee to bring home. We eventually met up with the other kids and went and found a KFC that was in the main square that was selling ice cream, so we got some of that, and then we heard of the Note Cafe, so we wanted to go over there. The Note Cafe is basically a 4-story cafe that is absolutely covered head to toe in sticky notes. You can write a love message and leave it behind, and people put them in the wildest of places. I think it's funny because I'm short enough that I can stand and not get hurt. We decided to stick around for a little bit. We wrote our own little love notes and we had a coffee before we were heading on out again to go and hopefully see the temple by the water. It was overgrown and completely covered by trees, so I couldn't get a video of it from the outside, and because it was quite late, it was closed as well, so we couldn't go inside either. But I did see the gates and I was happy that we at least stopped by. The rest of the night basically concluded by us meeting up with the parents at different coffee shops and eventually going back to the hotel. Day 7, and the day that we head to Hoi An Ancient City.
I think it's day 7, but hello, we are leaving Hanoi to go catch a flight now to Da Nang, and then we'll catch a bus from there to Hoi An. I hope I'm saying those right. And then yeah, we're spending a night there before returning to Da Nang for 2 nights. It's been good, it's been alright. We did lots of city walking last night, and yeah, we're on our way soon.
I'm shooting.
You're shooting? I told Alch about a Reddit post and now he's making memes.
Alch and I weren't planning on getting breakfast before we headed off because we were just going to get it at the airport, but his mum brought us some banh mi and some coffee, and his sister brought us some coffee biscuits. Very soon, we were on our way for another flight. Hoi An is actually quite small, so it doesn't have its own airport, which meant that we were flying from Hanoi to Da Nang. Honestly, I think that travel time took up most of our trip. When we arrived in Da Nang, it was basically pick up our luggage and head to another taxi to take us to our hotel. It was quite a scenic drive and was only about 40 minutes total, so I wasn't complaining too much. One thing that I did notice along the way was that there was a lot of empty hotel buildings. Basically, we were told by the taxi driver that there were multimillionaires that came and created these hotels, but once the Vietnamese government heard that they were built illegally, they basically shut it all down. I thought our room was super cute, and it was completely different from the ones that we had stayed in previously throughout the trip, so I really liked it here.
Oh yeah.
We also had a really nice view from our room as well. It was super cool to find out that the hotel itself actually was based on a story of Vietnamese history. I'm not 100% sure of their names, but basically there was a Vietnamese princess that fell in love with a Japanese fisherman merchant, and they built this hotel to commemorate their love story. So there was one wing dedicated to the princess and another dedicated to the merchant husband. After hearing the story, Alch and I decided to go down the princess's wing and find the rooftop pool. We didn't stay for too long or go for a swim because we had to meet up with the rest of the family to have dinner, and then we were heading into town to go see the lanterns that they had around the markets. It wasn't a very far walk at all, and luckily there were plenty of markets so we could pick up a lot of souvenirs from here. Alch was also really excited to show his dad that there was a Mr. Bean cafe. There were actually quite a few celebrity-themed cafes, but Mr. Bean is the one that stood out the most to us. I thought it was a really unique experience because we were walking around surrounded by old buildings, and then we would walk into one and there would be a crock shop. One of the things that I was most excited to do in this area was to buy ourselves one of the lanterns and pay to go onto a gondola out onto the water so we could make a prayer and put the lanterns into the water. It gave real Tangled vibes, and I don't know if you guys know this, but Alch and I absolutely loved that movie.
Look at all those chickens.
It was quite lucky that we had Alch's mum with us for a majority of the time because we got the lanterns for quite a cheap price, and I was happy to bring some home. There wasn't much else that we did that night apart from grab something to eat and have a look at more and more souvenirs, but when we got back to the hotel we were greeted with yet another cake and had a little laugh before settling down for the night. For day 8 we had a few things booked out for the day, mostly touristy things, and then we were heading to Da Nang, which wasn't actually too far from Hoi An itself. After breakfast, Alch and I went for a walk through Hoi An Ancient City just because he needed some medication from a pharmacy and the parents were taking a while to get ready to go in the taxi. I'm actually so glad that Alch and I went on a few walks around the different cities and areas that we're in because it's some of the coolest memories that I actually have of the entire trip. Once we got Alch some meds, we started to head back, but we found this cute little bubble tea place that was covered in bird cages, and I really wanted to go in, but we were running a bit late. Our first official stop of the day were the coconut boats. I'm not too sure why they were called coconut boats, mainly probably because they look like coconuts, but I think they were actually made of bamboo. The boats themselves were driven by some of the locals, and they would take us down the stream and give us little performances along the way. I'm not sure if you can tell by the look on my face, but I was seriously starting to regret my outfit of the day. I was super excited about the cute hats though. It was actually a super nice time. We got to see so many different fishing boats and so many locals just doing their thing around the stream. Even the drivers of the boat were racing each other for our entertainment. And then it was time for them to show us what they did best, which apparently was spinning the coconut boats around. And I think that was a pretty cool skill in itself. Not too long after, they treated us to a little song. Everyone seemed to enjoy this one, especially Alch's dad. It wasn't too long before we had to start heading back because we were due to see our next destination.
What is it, baby?
What is it?
Chicken.
Chicken. Oh, okay. You have to buy it. Okay.
Tastes like chicken?
Of course, we got dessert on the way though. One of the things I noticed on the drive to and from Da Nang is that there were statues absolutely everywhere, and they were huge, and I always wondered why. That was until we went to the mountain temple. It was quite high up the mountain, but because we wanted to have the full experience, we decided to take the stairs instead of the elevator. But the temple and the statues up the top were breathtaking. We did have to be careful and respectful while we were there, not being too loud or anything because there were still monks that lived in the temple. We were also allowed to go inside as long as we took our shoes off, but it was a bit hard for us, so we didn't end up going inside. However, we did go to a little cave out the back.
And we're going through the cave.
Sort of a temple, why am I in a cave?
By looking at the map, we realized that there was so much left to do and so much left to see up on this mountain. However, we didn't have the time to see everything, so I did miss out on a few things. But I, of course, got the best thing of all, which was the statue in the cave. It wasn't too long before we had to go back outside and meet up with the rest of the family so we could begin our descent down the mountain and onto the next area. We had finally arrived in the city of Da Nang, and it was about time that we checked into our hotel room. We did see the Dragon Bridge a couple of times coming in and out, but we never actually got to go right up to it. This hotel was another super fancy one, and I was ready to turn in for the night right then and there. However, we still needed to go find dinner after we settled down.
And like a whole kitchen. Bathroom's kind of small, but we got a lounge room area. Oh my gosh. This is our room.
They can't see the bridge, but we can.
Whoa! Pretty. And the Dragon Bridge is over there. I don't know if you can see it.
Met up with the rest of the family outside, and we went for a long walk down the street to go and find something to eat. We went all the way down to the markets at the end of the street near the Dragon Bridge, but we couldn't decide on anything, so Alch's brother chose somewhere over the other side of the bridge, and we took a taxi to go there. After dinner, the family wanted to keep exploring more and have a look at the shops around the area. However, Alch wasn't feeling too well and I was super tired, so we decided to turn in for the night. Day 9 was a good day, but I would say that it didn't quite go how we expected it to. We started off most mornings with the breakfast buffet as usual, and then we were on our way to Bana Hills, but what we noticed was that it was super cloudy and super foggy outside, quite damp, so we were a little concerned that we wouldn't be able to see anything. We soon got to the Sun World entrance and we took lots of photos and videos in front of it like normal tourists, and it was quite pretty.
Look. There's Priscilla. That's me.
On the other side, there's a monkey.
Is that Tiger?
I think that's Tiger.
What's that? Someone's bag?
Unless that's Tiger.
No dad?
The monkey, Alch's dad.
That's you?
That's me, dragon. Mine's the coolest. Let's go, you're the dragon.
Maybe that's a cat.
Could be, that could be cat instead of bunny.
Alch was really excited to see the Zodiac statues, and I thought they were quite cool as well, but we would learn that we would see quite a lot of them around. Here is Priscilla, Tristan, Symphony and Princeton pretending to be the Bana Hills hand bridge. And once the parents were finished taking photos, we were on our way up to the very top. Because the Bana Hills were quite tall, approximately 1,500 meters while I'm looking at Google, we had to take one of the gondolas up. I say gondolas, but I'm not too sure if they have an actual name. I want to make a note and say poor Alch, he was a real trooper. He was very sick and he also gets motion sickness quite easily. So at this point in time, we had been on the gondolas, we had been on boats, we had been on trains, we had been on buses, and he was just going through it. I'm sure you're starting to notice, but our predictions were correct and we could not see a thing as we ascended into the clouds. And very soon we were at the top, but it was worse up there than we thought. I was genuinely surprised to see so many other tourists around. I mean, this was the only day that we were able to do it, but it was such a terrible day to go for the view. But we had a lot of fun. We just couldn't see anything.
That's a thumb.
That's a thumb.
That's a thumb.
Despite it being super foggy, I think it was still surreal to be able to see such giant stone structures. There was a lot more to the place than we originally thought as well.
Okay, so I don't know what day it is, but we came up to the Bana Hills today, and it's going well, except it is super cloudy and super wet, and you can't actually see a lot of things like the views and stuff. But it's okay. We're having a good time. We've got ponchos and little souvenirs. Alch got a jacket, except he's cold, so I don't know how long we're gonna be here for. Wow, what a sausage.
The further we looked, the more we came across and basically found a bunch of different character statues throughout the whole thing. There was a French garden with lots of pretty roses and quite a few places to eat as well in case we got hungry.
Whoa! How'd you get here? I'm lost.
Okay.
We found a hedge maze, which I thought was really cool.
And if I know anything from all the games that I've played, this is how we die.
In the door. Is it a maze? Can I not get up?
Yeah, it's not really a maze, it's just leading us somewhere.
It's a pathway.
Cute.
I guess you could say that there was definitely enough things to keep us occupied.
It looks blurry, but it's not. That's just the clouds. It can't focus, but that's a peacock. That's its tail feathers.
I'm a dog.
Mmm. Oh,
Thank you.
hat.
The whole place was actually massive and we had to take the gondola ride multiple times to get further up the mountain. I want to say that this is probably the part where it all started to go a little bit wrong. Because of the dense fog, we ended up losing the family, so Alch and I went on a little bit of our own adventure around the whole park.
I think this is a castle, but like you can't see it. Actually, I think it's a dragon.
I know.
Alch for comparison. That's a big head. You can't see anything.
Dragon Den.
We got separated from the group and a little bit lost, but we decided to keep following the path because we wanted to see. Oh, there's a train. We wanted to see where it led, and now we're here.
I do want to apologize for my breathing into the video constantly, but the air was super thin up there and the fog was not helping. We also did a lot of walking around, so I was out of breath. But how cute was this ballroom that we found? Apparently they do actual ballroom dancing there and put on performances.
It looks like we went down another wrong way, but I don't think it's our fault because we're following the map and there are no signs to say that things are under construction until you get down or up and then get to the end, and then there are workers and things closed off. So we still haven't found the family. We know roughly where they are, but we are figuring it out as we go. We found them amongst the fog.
Bana Hills also had a huge amusement park area inside as well, but we were super tired, so I got a quick video and then we more or less left because we wanted some food. And very soon it was time to go back down the mountain, but this time it wasn't just Alch and I in a gondola with random strangers, but we actually went down with the rest of the family. In the next clip, some of the boys realized that when you clap at koi fish, they will come thinking it is feeding time, so they wanted to give it a go. When we got back, we wanted to stop by the swimming pool and have a little dip, and it was actually a lot warmer than we thought, but we were also just cold from Bana Hills. The rest of the family went out for dinner, but Alch wasn't feeling well, so we ended up going for a walk and then staying back and eating at the restaurant in the hotel. Day 10 was yet another big day, and one filled with travelling, of course. We went down to the breakfast buffet to get some energy before we had to head out. Alch was feeling a little bit better, but still on the very tired and sick side. It wasn't long before we had to check out of the hotel, and we had a bit of time before we had to go to the airport, so we actually went to go see one of the most famous statues and temples in Da Nang.
Trying my best to get photos, but it's too tall and it becomes distorted. The videos have to do. So how cute are these trees? They've got the wire underneath it, but then they make it so it's flat.
It was a very warm day and there was not a cloud in the sky, but we found some cold water and that helped Alch's situation just a little bit more. There were quite a few tourists around taking photos and things, and I was amazed by the whole structure of the thing.
Overlooking the ocean.
But we hadn't even gotten to the best part yet. This statue was referred to as the Godmother statue by the family, but when I googled it, everyone else called it the Lady Buddha statue, so I'm not sure what to call it, but it was amazing. Also, here's a little monkey friend that we found. He also went into the temple to pray.
How many?
Chickens.
Chickens.
It was finally time to head to the airport as well, but we did get to see the beach along the way. Another thing that Da Nang is famous for is the beaches, and I'm a little bit sad that we didn't get to go, but it just didn't work with our schedule. Also, when we got to the airport, Alch finally got his Burger King, and soon we were on our way to Ho Chi Minh. When we got there, we were told we were staying at Landmark 81, which is the tallest building in Ho Chi Minh. But the reservation itself was a little bit sus. The guy that was hosting basically told us our rooms weren't ready yet, so we left our luggage with them and went to find some dinner. At this point, we had been waiting for a few hours, so it was a little bit concerning that we hadn't had our room yet, but we were trying to not let it ruin our trip. While we were in the shopping centre, we also found a little store that did tangulu, and it was the first time I had ever tried it, so I wanted to get some.
Oh, my hair. Well, my hair got stuck to it. Oh, Alch got it. It's alright. It's all good.
Oh, tasty.
It's a very thin layer of sugar, so it's just sweet. It's not bad.
So that was all the footage I took for that night. Day 11 began with us getting up relatively early to pack up our bags and move to our actual rooms that we booked. After all the trouble of the night before, we were still a little frustrated, but we were happy that we at least had a place to stay and get clean for the night, and it was actually quite pretty as well. None of us were happy with the guy who was organising it though.
We're back at the same place as last night. Let's try this again.
And we did try again, but unfortunately our rooms still weren't ready yet, so we basically went into the shopping centre behind the hotel to go have some brunch. I say brunch because at this point it had been a couple of hours, but yeah, it was alright. Alch and I found a ramen place and it was quite tasty and we got full quite quickly. But by the time that we were done, the rest of the family weren't done, so we found this cute little cafe and actually I loved it. I don't know why, but some of my favourite parts of this trip was just sitting at a cafe with Alch. He got a very nice tasting tea and I got an iced coffee with creme caramel in it. Then we didn't really have any more plans for the rest of the day, so we went to go visit some family. It started off as one person, and then I think we ended up going to 3 different places.
We're currently in Ho Chi Minh City. Alch's family is visiting some relatives, and while the adults are all talking Viet to each other, us kids are walking down the streets and checking out things. We do have a relative that is around our age, so he's being a bit of a tour guide as we walk around and just telling us a little bit about the place.
I know it could be a little bit scary walking the streets of a Vietnamese city, but honestly, I really enjoyed it. And there were so many cool places to check out and things to try, like the different sundaes and drinks. And I think I felt a little bit more in my element when we were walking around and exploring. This was the last family that we saw for the night, but there was quite a few of them, and we were very lucky that they actually fed us dinner as well. Those kids were some of the cutest kids we've ever seen. The oldest one was really, really responsible and super nice, and the younger one was a little bit on the crazy side and for some reason obsessed with sitting on my lap. The older cousin Rena was also super nice and even took us for a ride on her motorbike as well while we were there. Some of us were getting quite tired though, so we decided to head back to the hotel to find that our rooms were finally available. This is me just showing off the room and just generally checking it because the whole situation was a little bit sus, but I was happy that we had another place to sleep for the night. Day 12 started off a little bit on the slow side. We met up with some family in the morning, but weren't really aware that we were going to until the parents told us otherwise. We were there for quite a few hours before we said that we just wanted to go have a day out and go shopping. So we took the taxis and us kids went into the city. The first place that we wanted to check out was a popular touristy place called the New Playground, which is basically a hub for Vietnamese street fashion. It was quite warm and toasty in that building though, so Alch and I left and went across the street to the giant shopping centre to go get some sweets and to have a coffee to cool down. I also learnt while we were over there that H&M were having a Pokemon collaboration, so I stopped by and picked up a Pikachu hoodie. And then the rest of the kids found this lovely cafe where we had another drink, but basically it was a cafe where you could take pottery lessons.
It's banana.
At this time, we found out that there was a second new playground and a much newer and bigger one, so we got some sweet treats for the walk and started our way there. It was a lot bigger than what we expected, and this one was air conditioned as well, so we spent, I'd say, a couple of hours here just looking at a bunch of different souvenirs and even just hanging around in the food court, because this one had a food court. One of my favorite things about the Vietnamese street fashion that we saw while we were here is a lot of the t-shirts have English slogans on them, but some of them, I'm not sure if they're badly translated, but they were just kind of funny. There was a shirt that just said feral across the top of it, and it made me giggle. While we were here, Alch was looking for something that was a little bit more traditional Vietnamese, but also a little bit on the streetwear side, so he found a cute outfit, and that's what he wore the next day. At this point, it was getting quite late and we hadn't eaten yet, so we walked quite a bit and finally met up with the parents at this little marketplace to have some dinner. Day 13 was a pretty packed day as well, although I feel like most of our days was packed. Here's me just admiring my frizzy hair for the day. Alch and I were able to get up and have a little coffee before we met up with the rest of the family and went out for lunch. We went for lunch with the lunch lady, who I hadn't heard of at the time, but is apparently a quite famous cook from Vietnam who has even met Obama, so I thought that was a pretty fun fact to learn, and the food was really good too. After lunch, we went to the Ben Thanh Market. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but it is one of the biggest marketplaces in Ho Chi Minh City. It was a great place to look at souvenir t-shirts, knickknacks, and even some ao dai like a few of the others wanted. We didn't stay for too long though because it was very hot and humid in there with a lot of people, so we went on a little adventure to find some art galleries. I didn't film in a lot of them because you actually weren't allowed to, but here were some of the paintings in the fine art one. And then we wanted to go look for the Ho Chi Minh City Museum of Fine Arts, which turned out to be right near the markets back where we started. It was a lot nicer in there, and a few of the rooms were air conditioned to preserve some of the art, so we got to hang around and have a look at all the different artists throughout Vietnamese history. There were quite a few pieces that had to do with the war, especially this big, massive one that took up an entire wall in a room that apparently took 20 years to finish painting. I think that had to have been my favourite one. Once we were done at the art museum, we went back to one of the new playgrounds to meet up with the rest of the family, and I got to finally try some bingsu, which was a delicious cold treat after a long hot day. And then after that, we met up for dinner and had some pho. This was a pretty touristy place because it's a stone boil pot. It constantly boils your food as you go. Day 14 was finally the day that we went to go visit Alch's dad's temple.
And some turtles down there. Little guy.
I didn't know whether it would be rude or disrespectful to record a lot of the time that we were there, so I only got a few shots, but basically we were paying respect and praying for the relatives that had passed. This was our last full day in Ho Chi Minh, so we did want to go and do a few things. While a couple of the girls were looking at wedding ao dai, we got some of the headache drink and waited in the car. We did go to a few more stops throughout the day, however I didn't record any of them because I was feeling quite tired and actually quite moody. So here is us when we got to one of the only things that I wanted to see in Ho Chi Minh, the cafe apartments. I think it's quite self-explanatory, but for anyone that doesn't know what it is, it's just a huge apartment building that has been turned into a bunch of cafes. Alch and I found a cute one called the Meraki Cafe and we sat down to order some drinks.
This tastes like custard coffee. Very sweet. I kind of like it.
That was my review on the egg coffee. We then met up with the rest of the family and a few of us wanted to do some last minute souvenir shopping, so we returned back to the new playground and finally got to go to Saigon Square to grab some more souvenirs. It was then time to decide what we wanted to eat for dinner, and of course we were very indecisive as a group, so we ended up splitting up and finding our own thing to eat. Alch and I ended up staying within the shopping centre and found a place that served gom dum, and that was our last dinner in Vietnam. Our last day begins with another early morning start as we head to the airport in Ho Chi Minh. We were once again stopping by Perth along the way, but we would soon be in Adelaide.
It's my luggage.
Oh. I was wrong, but it's falling. Oh no. I'm so tired.
It was overall a great trip. I really enjoyed sharing this with you guys and I hope you guys enjoyed it too.